everybody. This is Diane, and I want to welcome you to the very first episode of the Real Housewives of Alaska.
And strap in, because conservatively, we've estimated this to be 2 hours. I mean, it is the inaugural episode, so we are going to have to kind of describe our rating system and a few other things, but the subject matter is super duper interesting and not at all controversial.
And tell people who you are before I tell them why we picked this movie.
Oh, I'm Marnell. I'm also the co-host of Biters and now Real Alaskan Housewives.
And you are the reason that we call ourselves the Real Housewives of Alaska. So
yes,
here we are.
Entirely by accident. And I still need to figure out what I'm paying GoDaddy for our our .com.
And I need to get us on Twitter if you have not.
I have not, but we do have a Facebook page, thanks to you.
We do have a Facebook page, and I will get a Twitter account up in the next 24 hours. So we had originally talked about starting this podcast with the movie The 13th, which was directed by Ava DuVernay, which I think we're still planning on doing.
Yes.
But I said, let's do this little documentary that my barista told me about, because I think, everything is so politically fraught right now. It would probably be a really good idea for us to do something that's not political.
Right. And, this is not at all political.
Not even remotely.
Oh, but it's not as if we haven't delved into religion and politics before. We are trying to plan on wrapping up the final season of our Preacher podcast.
Oh my God, someday.
Keep an eye out for that someday.
I still haven't sat down and watched the last season.
Me either, but this kind of inspired me. Maybe I will.
But what movie are we talking about tonight, Marnell?
We are talking about Hail Satan!
With a question mark. I watched it on Hulu, and you watched it on Amazon, right?
I did. I rented it on Amazon for $2.99 in non-HD, because who needs to watch a documentary in HD?
Oh, that's blasphemy. I didn't even mean that when I said that. That is so bad.
A little ironic.
So, we have decided to pick our 2020 rating system as our overall rating system for this podcast. So, how did you rate this documentary?
I have been rating things 4 stars lately. And you know me, I'm usually very, very conservative. And it's kind of a little poetic that my first podcast that I was ever on, Biters, our Walking Dead podcast, the very first episode of The Walking Dead was a 5 stars from me. And now our inaugural Housewives podcast, our first movie, Hail Satan, is 5 stars. I really, really liked it. In fact, I might even change that to 5 pentagrams. Very good. Absolutely recommend.
That is hilarious.
So what did you rate it?
We are in complete concordance on this one. I said 5 out of 5 stars. Very good. Definitely recommended.
Well, hail Satan.
I can't believe how much I enjoyed this documentary. And I like documentaries. They're kind of my thing.
And so if you're listening to us, you have probably, hopefully, maybe watched the documentary. So you absolutely know that the Satanic Temple does not believe in the actual Satan.
Right. Although you and I kind of talked about this earlier today, and I think there might be a few people who are kind of, I don't even want to say old school Satanists, because Anton LaVey and the Church of Satan, they didn't really believe in Satan as a deity. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Probably get a little bit into that when we talk about Jex.
Yeah. So I've got a little bit of information and a couple of numbers. This movie was premiered at the Sundance Film Festival last year, which is pretty cool. And it was actually released for distribution in April of last year. It did a very modest box office, which we expect for documentaries in the U.S., right? Mm-hmm. It earned a little over $400,000 in box office. I couldn't find anything about how much it cost to produce it, but I think a lot of documentaries are honestly labors of love. So, right. And I get the sense from reading about the documentarian who did this film that she definitely chooses things that are labors of love.
And I think that probably the most expensive thing that they did on this documentary was all of the travel that they did.
Oh, yeah. Although, I really get the sense that travel was footed by the Satanic Temple. It was not footed by the documentarian.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, because, she was kind of following them around, documenting the stuff that they already would have been doing anyway.
Right.
So, her production company had to pay for her travel and the travel of her crew, but I don't think they had anything to do with the travel of the members of the temple.
And we start out in 2013, so this has been a very long documentary.
I'm not entirely sure that that's not some stock footage from the event that was held that kind of introduced them to the world in 2013.
So that's very true. So if you go on YouTube and you look up either Lucian Greaves, who is the co-founder and spokesperson for the church, the Temple of Satan, or you look up the Temple of Satan on
Satanic
YouTube.
Temple. I know. Yeah, the Satanic Temple. I know it's hard. It is. Yeah.
And we'll get into the whole Church of Satan thing.
Right.
But there is a lot of footage from a Vice kind of mini documentary on that uses a lot of the same footage, I think. So I think if we probably watched the credits through, they would probably credit some of the Vice crew for
and the reading that I did about Penny Lane, who is the woman who did the documentary, she advocated for quite some time to be allowed kind of into their inner circle to do the documentary, and they resisted for quite some time. So while I don't think she has been trying since 2013 to get this documentary made, it took her a while to get them to agree to do the documentary.
Interesting.
Basically, they just, they didn't want to be misinterpreted. Specifically, Lucian Greaves didn't want to be misinterpreted. He actually, and he says it in the film, I forget, like double layered identities or something like that. He uses
double layered pseudonym.
Yes, because he doesn't want his family to be targeted.
Yes.
So they were very concerned, and there's actually a little clip that I linked on our Facebook page of an interview that he and the documentarian did with one of the NPR hosts for All Things Considered. And he talks about how they didn't want this to become any one member's story, that they really wanted it to be about the activist work that the temple does.
I can see that.
So it was very interesting.
The whole thing is very interesting.
Oh my gosh.
If you are listening to this and you have not watched it,
stop
and go watch it. It's not your grandfather's Church of Satan. Church of Satan, yeah, it's not the Church of Satan at all.
And I will tell you, like, the other thing that made my little numbers category was there is a media critic for The Observer, which is a newspaper that's published in Britain on Sundays. And he had a list of 20 must-see documentaries to explain the world in 2020, and this movie made the list.
That's interesting. So Lucian, as one of the YouTube videos that I watched, Lucian Green did I think it was a Good Morning Britain or Wake Up Britain morning show, and they were very open and accepting and very enthused about his interviews. So
unlike Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, but we'll get into that.
Yes, yes, we will.
Oh my goodness. I did a little bit of reading about Penny Lane, who is the documentarian.
Okay,
There's no writer because this is a documentary. She's the director. Go
first
ahead, you were gonna
question.
say something.
Is Penny Lane really her name?
The article that I read said the fortuitously named Penny Lane. So I
Okay.
think it really is.
That's awesome.
I know, right?
I love it.
So she is known for two other documentaries. Her first movie was a movie called Our Nixon, and
Hmm.
it is a look at Super 8 home movies that were made by Nixon's staff during his presidency.
Interesting.
And then she did a documentary called Nuts, and the description of that is a medical entrepreneur parlayed a potion made from goat testicles into a radio empire.
Huh.
So I think she definitely picks things that are a labor of love.
Yeah, but I mean, both of those sound really, really interesting.
Uh-huh, I agree. I agree.
Huh.
The
We
person
may
who
have to do some more Penny Lane
right?
movies.
So the person who wrote the article that I read about Penny Lane is a movie critic for the Washington Post. Her name is Anne Hornaday, which I thought was really funny. Only because we're dealing with, horned beings.
Right.
But I thought this was wonderful. I actually saved this quote and wrote it down. She described the members of the Satanic Temple as unlikely patriots, a brave, idealistic band of misfits and rebels dedicated to such values as reason, personal liberty, bodily autonomy, and secularism in the public square.
That's them to a T.
Yeah. So this really, when I posted things to our new Facebook page tonight, I was like, pro tip, this is not what you're thinking this is.
Yes.
Okay, so this gets us into, in Biters, we call it our featured cast member. I was thinking maybe the Housewives hero. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that, because he's not really a cast member.
Right. I mean, sometimes we will be doing fictional movies. Sometimes we're going to do documentaries. I think we're going to talk about some TV series. There may even be a couple of podcasts that we talk about. How meta is that?
There are podcasts about podcasts. Not groundbreaking territory.
All right, very good.
So our, I guess, Housewives hero is the aforementioned Lucian Greaves. And you had mentioned that he also has another pseudonym, Douglas Mesner.
And I found another name for him in an article that I read, Doug Missico.
I think there may be a website. I think he either has a website with that or Douglas Mesner.
Okay.
He, and like you said, he has double layered pseudonyms, and I guess even more than that at this point, because he does not want his family to have any hate directed towards them. And thus far, he has done a very good job, because I could not find a real name for him. I couldn't find an age for him. Really, the only thing that I could kind of find on Lucian was he was born in Boston, and he studied and he graduated from Harvard University.
Which is pretty freaking amazing. He's not exactly an intellectual slouch.
No. In fact, his field of study was neuroscience, and he continues to study this day in philosophy, and his specialty is false memory syndrome.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple of things.
Okay.
I asked you this earlier today. I don't know if you got any closer. What is up with the traumatic cataract?
Could not find that.
Okay, so we both agreed that on looking closer, he's got some scarring around his right eye, and he definitely has a traumatic cataract, so something has happened. And when I was rewatching the documentary, it even looks like he might have a little bit of scarring around his left eye.
Yeah, I don't know. Just about everything that there's like I said, there was a lot of interest from Vice. There was not only the
There was a really good Vice article that I saved, and I'm gonna post a link to it.
yes. And if I kind of am looking at this right, he hasn't had that scarring his entire life, because there's some pictures of him when he actually did some work with the author of The Might is Right, which is a book he did some drawing
Okay,
for.
and I think that that is actually the guy who wrote the Vice article that I am looking at.
Yes.
Shane Bugby? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Um,
Although I don't know. I mean, I see pictures of a very young Lucian Greaves, but I can't tell. It still looks to me like he's got a cataract over that right eye when I look at him.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, it's not a huge deal. I was just curious to know if you'd found anything else out, because I will tell you, and this is completely prejudicial, but when I first started watching the documentary, I was like, all right, this dude is creepy and he's kind of creeping me out. And that Father Gabriel eye is really creeping me out. So.
And I originally, just because kind of the way that the show started out, with the actor actually,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I thought that maybe Lucian had a one of those kind of Hollywood Halloween style contact lenses that Marilyn Manson does that a lot of times, where he'll have one eye that's like completely blacked out and then the other one is like piercing blue.
Which, by the way, they featured a Marilyn Manson version of the song I Put a Spell on You in this documentary, and oh my god, it was really good.
You obviously have not watched some recent episodes of Lovecraft Country.
No, I'm still behind.
They also feature that song.
Yeah, so that's a perfect rendering of that song. Anyway, back to Lucian's eye. So you said that you thought that maybe it was a contact lens.
Yeah, and so it really wasn't until about halfway through where I was like, okay, this is a really serious guy, and he is very
Right.
well spoken and educated, and I was like, it was then that the other half was like, no, he's got like scars on his skin under that
Yeah.
eye, so that's definitely a legit, thing. And I'm terribly curious, but I could not find anything on it.
Honest to God, I fell harder in love with him and harder in love with this organization like halfway through it with the first watch, and even more so with the rewatch.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Honestly, like, okay, I've been holding this in and I was going to wait till the end of the episode, but I kind of think that we're down with TST.
I think so. Probably what is going to happen, and we talked about this earlier today, is that you and I are going to at least do one of their live, like, Zoom events.
Yes. Yes.
But we'll kind of talk about it, because, I mean, there was definitely some stuff that was really brought up for me, so we'll be talking about that as well.
Right, right. And I even have a mug picked out on
Me
the
too!
TST merch store. That will be my podcasting mug.
That is so funny. Oh my god. Oh my Satan. That is so funny. All right. So, what else did you find out about Lucian? Because I have a couple of things from that Vice article that I read.
So he also directed a kind of documentary in 2017 called Death of a Public Paranoid. And it is
That sounds fascinating.
It exposes and debunks the nonsense of Ted Gunderson, a man who was given much more credit than he deserves by the American media, primarily on the account of his antecedents.
Which is usually like your history or your forebears, your family.
Right. So I had to look up who Ted Gunderson was.
Okay.
And he was kind of the FBI agent that was at the center of the 80s and 90s satanic panic. Yeah.
which I really got the sense from reading about Lucian Greaves that that is very much what influenced his studies. It's
Yes.
very much what influenced his work today. That he kind of, I think he's close to either you or I in age, and he kind of came of age during the whole Satanic Panic thing.
Yes, and he mentions that in some of the articles. In the Vice article, he says, "I grew up in the shadow of what's known to sociologists as the Satanic Panic, an embarrassing episode of witch hunting in the modern era. I was horrified by daytime talk show fables of homicidal satanic cult hordes. I became very curious later on regarding the question of conspiracy claims, and I began pursuing an active study. Was there any truth to this idea of murderous satanic cults? In fact, there is no unbroken tradition of Satanism, no canonized Satan doctrine that extends back centuries into biblical times, nor is there a uniform concept of Satan." So he studied and continues to study the cognitive science or the pseudoscience of false memory. And he actually, let's see, where was it? Where did it go? Let's see. Oh, so he, like I said, he kind of immersed himself into this world of false memory related to ritual abuse and alien abduction. And part of what he does is exposes professional psychologists as culprits and forces them to recant, retire, or even run. He's very, very big on there are still people to this day who are in jail due to satanic panic. And, it's these implanted memories of ritualized abuse at the hands of, some big satanic conspiracy. And he wants to sort of bring that to light, that it was a pseudoscience, and these people were villainized for absolutely no reason, and they're still villainized to this day. It destroyed lives.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, there's really not much out there on the guy personally, and I kind of am okay with that because of kind of some of the things that we saw in this documentary. So
Right.
we'll get into that. But
right. I mean, there's one thing in particular, and I wrote it down and we'll talk about it. It was like the saddest moment of the documentary for me.
I wonder if it's the same moment.
I wonder. Probably.
Okay. All right. That's all I had on Lucian.
So I had a little bit more from that Vice article, more about his take on the founding of the Satanic Temple. So he said that originally it was independent of him, and that a friend and that friend's colleague were kind of the people who were behind it initially, and they visualized it as a, quote, poison pill in the church versus state debate. So for them, it was entirely political. It was entirely about saying, all right, if you're going to put something Christian in the public square, you have to represent other religions as well.
Right.
And they brought him in, according to him, as a consultant because his area of study was very heavy in the history of witch hunts. And he had apparently a strong understanding of Satanism as well. So they kind of brought him in because of those two areas of expertise. And he describes the Satanic Temple as a sincere movement to separate religion from superstition, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
And his example of that, so he talked a little bit about the pink mass. Excuse me, I bit my tongue. The pink mass, which they talk about a little bit at the beginning of the documentary, where they go to the grave of Fred Phelps's mother. Mm-hmm. Fred Phelps being the Westboro Baptist, right?
Yep.
Right. So for people who don't know that, and they have gay couples kiss on her over her tombstone and then declare her a lesbian in the afterlife, and it's kind of a mockery of the Mormon Church's belief that they can baptize people and declare them Mormon long after
Posthumously.
their deaths.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, his thing was that was not supernatural. None of us believe that we are changing her afterlife, that what we're really doing is playing on Fred Phelps's religious fears.
Right. Right. And there was that whole theme was sort of threaded throughout the documentary,
Absolutely.
which I appreciate. Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
You can, Diane and I started following Lucian on Twitter.
Oh, right. You told me he was very active on Twitter, so I did in fact follow him on Twitter, and he hates
QAnon.
Which we'll probably have to talk about QAnon at some point. We'll have to figure out, watch a documentary about them or something.
Because that's not controversial at all.
Not even remotely. Or political. No.
So you can follow him at Lucian Greaves on Twitter. And you can also follow the Satanic Temple at the Satanic _, at Satanic _temple_. So there was actually an interesting little thing about them on Twitter. Lucian had his Twitter account and the Satanic Temple had their Twitter account, and they actually received threats of violence from a woman, I cannot remember her name, but was also retweeted by Corey Feldman.
Oh, really?
Yes. And this woman was inciting people to go burn down the Satanic Temple's main headquarters in Salem, Massachusetts. And Corey Feldman retweeted that, and the Satanic Temple appealed to Twitter and said, one, okay, not only have you not blue checked verified us when you have the Pope and every other person, and this was when they were still handing out blue checks, but two, you have not suspended the account of this woman who has threatened harm and violence to us, and the people who have retweeted her, Corey Feldman.
Yeah, so was he retweeting because he agreed that there should be violence against Lucian Greaves in the church or the Satanic Temple?
It didn't specifically say, but I would imagine so. I mean, she said that people should go burn, their headquarters down.
Nice.
And
she sounds nice.
Right? And so in response, Twitter deleted Lucian and the Satanic Temple's Twitter accounts. So they had to make new ones, and they did not delete any of the accounts that tweeted violence towards them. So
interesting.
Yeah, that just goes to show you that totally misunderstood, and people kind of sort of pick and choose what rules they want to enforce depending on who is on what end of it.
I completely have a love-hate relationship with Twitter, even though I'm going to go get us a Twitter account. I'm going to get us a Twitter account.
I have a love-hate relationship with all social media.
Right.
And, I was going to say there's actually a pretty big, I want to say Wiccan, maybe, presence on TikTok.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And it's like the modern Wiccanism, where it's like, you don't call the Catholic Church or anything a cult, or you say you don't believe in witches or anything like that, and it's like, you drink the blood and eat the body of Christ, and you wear a talisman for protection, so you're a witch. So yeah, that's probably why they have kind of a funky Twitter handle.
Because they had to recreate it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so kind of a segue into our news segment, which we're going to call the Housewives Weekly. Marnell text messaged a thing to me today. So Alaska got its own little taste of the Satanic Temple last year.
We did.
Which I thought, I remembered it, but then to realize that it was connected to Hail Satan and to this Satanic Temple, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Right?
So in June of last year, a woman named Iris Fontana actually did an invocation at the Kenai Peninsula Borough, chamber meeting or city meeting. So the Kenai Peninsula Borough is a big area of land in south central Alaska. So it encompasses a lot of different small and larger towns. Anyway, so she did an invocation that was for the Satanic Temple. And apparently there were protesters outside and about a dozen people walked out. And it turns out that she was actually part of a lawsuit that the ACLU of Alaska filed against the Kenai Peninsula Borough because they had actually denied two other people permission to give invocations, a Jewish person, which Judaism doesn't seem very controversial to me. I don't know.
I guess it depends on who you are.
It depends on where you live in Alaska.
Yep.
And then they had denied an atheist permission to do an invocation. So they actually sued with those two people as plaintiffs and with Iris Fontana as a plaintiff. And the Kenai Peninsula Borough lost in the Alaska Supreme Court. And now anyone can give an invocation in front of the Kenai Peninsula Borough.
Unlike Phoenix, where in the documentary, they just decided they would no longer do an invocation before the city council meetings.
A moment of silent prayer.
So, do you have what her invocation was?
I don't. Do you?
I do.
Oh, well, hail Satan. Let's do it.
This is the exact thing that she said that people walked out in protest to. That which will not bend must break, and that which can be destroyed by truth should never be spared as demise. It is done. Hail Satan. That's all she said.
I'm pretty sure it was the Hail Satan part that freaked people out because it is the Bible Belt of Alaska. You know that because you had to live there for a little while.
Yes, I did, with some very, very fundamentalist Christians.
Yes. Ugh, sorry.
0 stars, very bad. Would not
Do not recommend.
And I'm not knocking anyone's religion. It was forced upon me. That is my only thing.
Yes.
They are absolutely free and fine to do, their thing. I respect what they do in their church and behind their own closed doors, but don't force it down other people's throats.
Well, and we'll get into the conversation around Jex. Mm-hmm. But I think that is a big part of where the schism happened between her and the Satanic Temple, is that the Satanic Temple is pretty much the same way. They're like, you know what? You can believe whatever the heck you want. Just don't force it on the rest of us.
Yep.
Groovy. You want to have the 10 Commandments be the thing that leads your life? Great. Don't put it in the public square unless you expect us to put our belief system in the public square as well.
Don't indoctrinate children with after-school programs that are, forced on them by the church.
Right.
Or we will too.
Right.
And our indoctrination means that we're just going to let them be free thinkers.
Yes. So I did, like I said, put that link up for, Penny Lane and Lucian Greaves being interviewed on All Things Considered. So that's on our Facebook page. There is a ton of news. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through everything, but I'll run through some stuff really quickly. So they did just award their first scholarships to high school graduates. So they awarded 4 scholarships in the amount of $666 to 4 2020 high school graduates. And I forget exactly what the questions are. I didn't keep the article open, but one of them was something like, what are you doing to further the cause of the Satanic Temple? And another one was, describe to us briefly one teacher who completely crushed your soul and made your public school existence hell.
Oh my Satan, that is awesome.
And I can tell you, and I'm going to say his name out loud, Al Carlson, who taught my algebra class.
What is it with algebra teachers?
Hell.
Oh my goodness. You went to JDHS, right?
Yeah, I did. We went to the same high school.
He was probably the same guy. I can't remember his name, but he was,
He spent most of the time staring down my friend's sweater because she had ginormous boobs.
Okay, I swear to God, it's the same guy.
He was a soul crusher.
Ugh. I just remember the creep factor.
Yeah, total creep factor.
Yeah.
All right. Also in the news, and this is really recent. This is like last month. The Satanic Temple is suing Lamar Advertising because they refused to post 8 billboards that the Satanic Temple had paid for. So they actually did these billboards promoting what they call their religious abortion ritual. And what it actually is they are basically giving their members a religious exemption from specific state regulations that they say violate their beliefs, and things like mandatory waiting periods before a woman can get an abortion, and compulsory counseling before a woman can get an abortion, because really honestly a lot of that counseling contains non-scientific information.
Yep.
So that lawsuit, as far as I can tell, is still ongoing. And Lamar, the company that makes the billboards, said, well, they were not honest with us about what they were going to represent. We feel like it's crude. We don't want that in the public square, blah, blah, blah. And TST's argument is this billboard manufacturer can't regulate public speech.
Right.
That's not okay. We're paying the same amount of money that anybody else would pay.
You know what is absolutely hilarious is I specifically remember going to a gun range in Washington, and above that gun range was a billboard on the highway for the next stop had a porno shop. I'm totally fine with that. I'm okay, but you know what? If you can advertise that, you can advertise the Church of Satan.
Right.
I'm sorry, the TST.
Yeah.
The Satanic Temple. And I'm going to keep doing that.
I know, and it's really funny because they said pretty early on in the documentary, they were like, well, how'd you come up with the name? And they were like, frankly, it was one of the few names that wasn't taken. So this summer, the Satanic Temple threatened to sue the state of Mississippi if they pursue a law signed by the governor Tate Reeves, making it mandatory that the new flag of Mississippi must include the words "In God We Trust." So the old flag was retired this summer because it had Confederate imagery. Mm-hmm. And the new flag, again, had to have that religious language on it. And the point that the Satanic Temple made was, you'd be really offended if we required you to put "In Satan We Trust" on your flag. Mm-hmm. Now, the last thing I saw, the designs were due for the new flag on the 14th of September, and I have not been able to find an update to that story. Just 2 more things, and these are older, but they are right around the time that the documentary was released. So Entertainment Weekly wrote an article, and this was so funny because it's kind of inflammatory, saying that this documentary is turning people into Satanists. It's kind of inflammatory, but it's kind of true.
Yeah, I don't think it's turning people into Satanists. I think people are realizing, I totally agree with those people. We're just realizing we're Satanists.
Right. The other thing, and I thought this was kind of cool because, for all that I don't always agree with the U.S. military, they play pretty equal when it comes to religious freedom. I mean, there are...
Lucian actually said in when he spoke to the American Humanist Association that former and current military members make up actually a very large part of their membership, and they have fought to get memorials put up the same way that there are veterans memorials with crosses and
which I
Stars of
actually
David.
read about that, and I can't remember what state that memorial is in, but basically all of the complaints that the Satanic Temple made in court have been thrown out but one.
Mm-hmm.
So their fight goes on.
Anyway.
But so you actually were illuminating part of what I was going to say, which is, that the military does play pretty equally. I mean, there are people who are buried in Arlington who have Muslim symbols on their tombstones. There are people who have Wiccan symbols on their tombstones. I'm sure there are lots of crosses of David, or crosses of David. Oh my God. I can't believe I just said that. Stars of David. So I mean, the military's always been, I shouldn't say always, the military as I have grown up has been fairly even-handed. Mm-hmm. The Naval Academy at Annapolis in October of last year gave the midshipmen a Satanic Temple room so they could convene and discuss at the Satanic Temple and meet around the Satanic Temple.
That's amazing.
At the Naval Academy. I know,
That's
right?
Amazing. So I haven't gotten all the way through it, but there is a super interesting, it's not an interview. Lucian Greaves went and spoke at the University of Chicago Law School for this secular legal society. And it's 48 minutes. It's on YouTube. Like I said, I'm about halfway through. And he talks a lot about a lot of the legal battles that they fought, whether they've won or lost them, that they're still ongoing.
Oh, very cool.
The point behind them. And one of the reasons why they don't do a lot of public speaking about a lot of the lawsuits that he mentions in this, it's not an interview, it's a speaking engagement, I guess, is because he doesn't want people to get the idea that that is solely what they are.
Right. It's a big part of what they do.
It is.
But it's not solely what they are.
Right. Exactly.
So I wanted to include, and this is an homage to you, a section called Call to Action. And it's really talking about, different things that we can do to support causes that are highlighted in the media that we're going to be discussing over the course of this podcast. So you can go to thesatanictemple.com and you can donate to them. You can buy merch. You can look at what their advocacy campaigns are. I'm just going to highlight a couple of them because they've got a bunch. You mentioned... go ahead.
You mentioned a bunch in the documentary,
yes.
too. Yeah.
So you mentioned After School Satan, and the whole thing is, they want children to be given an opportunity to realize that there are evangelical materials being brought into their school, and that those only represent one religious opinion among many.
Mm-hmm.
They have a religious reproductive rights advocacy campaign, and it's about their call for bodily autonomy and acting in accordance with scientific evidence. So they are really, really acting strongly against any interference with abortion access, which I think is going to become more and more pertinent, as we well know.
Mm-hmm.
They are still, as far as I can tell, in a lawsuit against Scottsdale, Arizona about their invocation program. And they're still working on the Veterans Monument that we talked about. There is a ton of stuff on their past and current campaigns on their website.
And that's just what they do at a national level.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the local chapters,
right?
Like we said in the documentary, they mention a lot of them. They have sock drives, so they collect socks for the homeless, which are one of the most requested items for people who are homeless and live on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
They have a menstrual product drive
Yep.
to collect menstrual products for not only just women who are homeless, but women who are underserved in the community who can't afford them because they are not considered a necessity item.
Can you
So
imagine that?
they're
Can
not
you
covered
just
under programs like WIC or things like that.
can you just Real Housewife with me for a minute there and wrap your brain around the fact that menstrual products are not considered necessities for women?
Not only they're not considered necessities, but they are also not taxed at the right rate. They honestly should be tax exempt at like a lot
Like other medical things?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling.
Head explodes.
And this is where I'm kind of on Jex's side where I'm like, tear down the patriarchy.
Okay, so there, and we'll talk again. We're going to talk more about Jax, and we're like 45 minutes in,
Right.
and buckle up because we are so not done.
So they have blood drives, adopt a highway, adopt beaches, and one of the things that I liked that they mentioned in one of their national meetings was they were talking about the campaigns that they were going to do next, and one guy his specific words were "do as much good as we possibly can."
Oh, and that actually, so I wanted to read their tenets.
Mm-hmm.
There's
I have
7
those pulled up
tenets.
too. Yep.
Okay, so we'll take them one at a time. I'll take the first one.
Okay.
So there are 7 fundamental tenets of the Satanic Temple. And if you're offended by these tenets, I'm sorry, you probably shouldn't listen to this podcast because I think we're pretty much in line with all of them.
Yeah, I can't see anybody being against any one of these.
And not a single one of them mentions Satan, just in case you're uncomfortable.
Yep.
Okay, tenet number 1. One should strive to act with compassion and empathy toward all creatures in accordance with reason.
Tenet number 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing, necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions.
Number 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone.
Tenet 4, the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forgo one's own.
Number 5, beliefs should conform to one's best scientific understanding of the world. One should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs.
So relevant.
So relevant.
Tenet 6, people are fallible. If one makes a mistake, one should do its best to rectify it and resolve any harm that may have been caused.
And the final tenet, tenet 7. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word.
Hail Satan. No, it doesn't say that.
No. That was Marnell's little ad
That was
lib.
me. But I mean, how can you be against any of that, you know?
So I'm thinking at this point that there are definitely people who would be like, those women are so misled, and that is Satanism in pretty packaging with a
Right?
pink bow.
What's the usual suspects? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist.
Right. There we go. I just want to say, by the way, as I'm looking at the TST shop, their satanic hot sauce sounds pretty good too.
You know, I'm a huge skeptic of novelty hot sauce, but I do have to say that I really, really like Hooters hot sauce. And I'm not even kidding. If you compare the ingredients from Hooters hot sauce to Tabasco sauce, the only difference is Hooters has brown sugar.
Oh my God, that is hilarious. All right, well, you should get the hot sauce 4-pack and let us all know how it is. And how it compares to Hooters.
And I will have it on my vegetarian chicken wings or chicken nuggets that I've started eating.
Good for you.
They're actually really good.
Okay, so I've got to ask you, are you getting the round logo tall belly mug, or are you getting like one of the more square mugs? Or
I want a round one because
I do too.
I'm a super klutz, so I have a tendency to like kind of knock my glasses, and round ones have a tendency to be much more stable.
I have a funny feeling that we're going to order exactly the same mug, and they're going to be like, huh, there's two chicks from Alaska that are ordering mugs all of a sudden. What the heck?
Twinsies.
All right, so that leads us into in biters, we call them goods, bads, and uglies. Marnell came up with the perfect rating system for Alaska.
So in Alaska, we have this joke, and it's probably a joke with states that have a lot of hard ground freeze in the winter. There are two seasons in Alaska: summer and road construction. I'm sorry, winter and road construction. Winter and road construction. So our rating system is summer good, winter bad, road construction ugly.
And so, in biters, when we talk about an ugly, it can be good or bad, right?
Right.
And I was thinking,
like road construction. Road construction
Right.
sucks, but it's necessary because who wants crappy roads?
So that is exactly what I said. I'm like, it's annoying, but it's much needed, and it heralds summer.
Exactly. Exactly. And so we also have a sort of a catch-all in biters. It's called our rotting potpourri. It's where it's not good, it's not bad, it's ugly. It's just other stuff that we want to discuss from whatever we are watching. And because of that, we decided to call our rotting potpourri bycatch.
And you may have to,
bycatch?
I was going to say, you may have to explain what bycatch is.
So whenever a fisherman casts their net out in the water, they are usually looking to catch something specific, like tuna or salmon or something like that. And because it's the ocean and there are no lanes for specific fish, you catch other things in the net too, like, I don't know, dolphins and rockfish and things like that. So,
oh my God, that describes us perfectly as podcasters. There are no lanes.
No lanes. So, bycatch is just sort of everything else that gets caught up in the net. Perfect, right?
Perfect.
I'm a genius. I'm really, really not modest.
All right, so do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
I would like you to go first.
Okay, so my summer, my good, is that this movie, especially the first time I watched it, made me really uncomfortable. And it made me think about my own religious baggage. So I have to share a little bit of TMI. So what, and you and I were talking, and this is really funny. So we're 10 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up in the same family system, but because of that 10-year difference, we've had some very different experiences. I mean, there are times it's like, did you grow up in the same family?
It's implanted memory.
There you go. So when I was a kid, we didn't have tons of church, but we were taken to church a fair amount. And the church that we were taken to is the Assembly of God, which is a pretty darn fundamentalist church, like speaking in tongues, rolling in the aisles kind of church. Our uncle, whom Arnell was forced to live with for a while, is a minister in the Assembly of God church and tells all sorts of horrific stories about casting demons out of people when he was on a mission in Africa. So that kind of gives you an idea of like what my starting point is, right? And then I kind of was like, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in anything. This is a stupid belief system. I can't believe that they're telling me I have to get rid of my Kiss and Def Leppard records. And then I kind of got interested in paganism, and for a while I was actually part of a Wiccan coven. I've had a flirtation with Buddhism over the years, and I still listen to and read a lot of Buddhist stuff. And I would have to say now I'm kind of a polytheist. But what I really learned was that you cannot take the church out of the girl. You and I talked about it earlier today. You said you can take the girl out of the church. You can't take the
church out of the girl.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because there was imagery that I was uncomfortable with. Some of the darker scenes, especially scenes with Jex, where they were standing up on a darkened stage yelling, "Hail Satan!" I was like, I'm a little uncomfortable. This is freaking me out a little bit. And like, even when they were talking about merch, I was like, I'm not really sure that I would be okay with having their stuff in my space.
Which is funny because you actually used to wear a pentacle.
But the difference is, and people who are Wiccan or pagan will tell you this, when you look at the pentagram or the pentacle that the Satanic Temple uses and that Satanist groups use, the point is upside down.
Right.
When you look at the pentacle that pagans use, that Wiccans use, the point is upward, and it is said to represent the 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, and spirit. So very different.
And the upside down one is basically the horned god, right? The goat. Yeah.
Right. Baphomet.
Yep.
Anyway, so it was just very interesting to me that I was like so uncomfortable with so much of it, but so fascinated by it, and ultimately like, yeah, these people are pretty cool.
Yeah, these are my people.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say 100% they're my people, but some of them definitely are.
I was going to say the vast majority of the people that they interviewed, I was like, that would be somebody I would hang out with.
All right. You know who I would hang out with? The dude who played D&D when he was growing up. Seriously, because he was like, you know what? While everybody was freaking out about the Satanic Panic, and while everybody was saying that Satanists are horrible and that D&D is a tool of Satan and that I was a bad person because I was playing D&D, the church was molesting kids.
Total projection.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that dude, definitely someone I would hang out with.
The guy with the gauges in his ears.
Yeah. I loved him. Yeah. He was great too. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the woman that was like, I was a loser who hung out in bookstores. I'm like, oh honey, that doesn't make you a loser.
Right. That definitely makes you my people.
Right? Exactly. So it's funny, you and I, like you said, 10 years apart, and we had vastly different experiences in childhood because, well, I do distinctly remember going to church with our mother and my father. It wasn't a weekly thing. I do remember going to Sunday school, so there might have been some times where we did go like on Sundays, that type of thing, but it was mostly like an Easter and Christmas deal. It wasn't, get up every Sunday morning and put your Sunday best on and go to church for 4 hours or whatever.
And I would say for a while that was truth when I was a kid, but it was definitely heavier church attendance when we were visiting grandma, our mom's mom.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Way heavier church attendance than...
Yeah.
She would be horrified by the conversation we're having right now. She would. And that makes me sad because I loved her very much, but she would be just convinced that we're both going to hell. Right. Yeah.
And I am super grateful that I didn't have a lot of that forced upon me at a young age. I don't feel that I was indoctrinated in any way. Even when I do remember going to church and going to Sunday school, I think most churches do this. Like at some point, you do the I don't know, hour or whatever, and then there's a second hour where they take the kids to
right, yeah,
and then and so I remember them just being like stories, like almost like Disney stories, only with one central character.
I think you're putting a much nicer spin on it.
I don't remember. Maybe it's because I didn't actually believe it. It was like, okay, there's God and unicorns, and that's basically the same thing because neither of them exist,
So, the funny thing is that even for all that I was uncomfortable with some aspects of this documentary, again, especially when I first watched it, I am resentful as hell about having Assembly of God crap forced on me.
And
resentful as hell still. Nearly 50 years old, and I still resent the heck out of it. In fact, I invited one of our nieces to like our podcast page, I specifically did not invite her mom or her sister-in-law because I know that they would be completely offended.
And I was going to say there are certain sections of our family where there was a lot of fundamental Judeo-Christian values that were forced upon children at a young age. And I think that I don't want to say they suffered for it. That suffer is a strong word, but I think they...
Honey, you can put that word in my mouth. I will say suffer.
Their growth into adulthood was very stunted because of it. They had a lot of misbeliefs about the world and their own bodies. And I mean, just like I grew up watching like the movie The Last Unicorn, which is probably why I thought of unicorns. But, you know, I think that certain members of our family and our family at large would have probably seen those the same as Harry Potter, where it's satanic and you shouldn't watch that.
Right.
You know, anything magic is satanic.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely loved that I grew up with the freedom to kind of watch that and experience that and develop my own likes and dislikes and beliefs and non-beliefs and things like that. And I just can't imagine not discovering that until, you know, probably about my early 20s.
I'm just grateful as hell that I discovered paganism when I was in my late teens. Grateful as hell. And my first really serious boyfriend was a Buddhist.
I'm super grateful that I was allowed to watch horror movies at little which totally scarred me for life. I don't have an under the bed. My bed sits on I have a bed, but it's got only like a 1-inch clearance on the ground. So
I swear to God, you and Steve are like brother and sister, and Diana and I are like sisters from another mister.
Yep.
Because
exactly.
For people who don't listen to Biters and who don't listen to the Walking Dead stuff, Diana and Steve are friends of ours who have a Walking Dead podcast called Aim for the Head.
Yeah, they do. They're kind of like us, where in their off season for The Walking Dead, they do some other, usually zombie related podcasts, but they just did. I just listened to the one they did for The Outsider, so they do other non-zombie related fare. So
which
if you were,
by the way, Steve said we twisted his arm enough, he'll come on The Real Housewives.
Even though he is not a housewife or Alaskan, yeah, he's totally welcome. We'll have to find something to podcast with him about.
Oh, I'm sure we'll find something.
Yeah.
All right, so I kind of hijacked your summer. What was your good? What was your summer?
Okay, so my summer was that when I first started watching this, it started out, and because you and I had kind of discussed it before I watched it, and you were like, you're right, it is about what you said it was about.
Right, because we had talked a little bit about it on Biters, and I was like, Church of Satan, blah, 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 it's totally about the church, and you're like, no, it's about a group that came about in the 90s, and I was like,
Yeah, I was like, it's about the guys trying to get the 10 Commandments stuff removed from courthouses.
And I was totally like,
But so this started out, and it was almost like satire. It was almost a parody of what I thought it was. And, I kind of want to say that they had to start out doing these big, almost, and they do a lot of performance art that is blasphemous and in your face and shocking and things like that, because they have to kind of get the attention and get their word out. Lucian talks about how a lot of the news site, the reason why they don't talk about a lot of the legal stuff is because the news stuff that is usually written about them is very clickbaity, and so they don't want people to get the wrong impression. And so I think that's probably goes into why they were sort of standoffish about having a documentary made about them, because they were very, very worried about the image that was going to be portrayed.
Completely.
And so in the beginning, Lucian actually hired an actor to do their initial, I want to say, media stunt, which was, and I'm going to say it, trolling Rick Scott. I
Oh
don't.
my God, that was so funny.
It was. It was. Hail Satan and hail Rick Scott. So Rick
Okay, and
Scott.
and so people have some background. Rick Scott was very much bringing his Christianity into public office,
And
very
into
much.
schools.
And
Um,
yes, yes.
I
I
forget
talked over
what.
you. Into schools is what you said, just so people know.
Yeah, I forget what it was basically the after school program that was going to bring in talking about like they were going to have sort of mindful aspirations brought into school, which were basically going to be scripture. And so the Satanic Temple decided that they were going to endorse this idea that Rick Scott had. This was a fabulous idea to start teaching religion in schools, because if you start teaching one religion in school, you have to teach them all. You have to have the mechanism to have any religion that wants to go into a school to be able to do that. And so that's where we get the after school Satan program. But so they kind of started out as almost a satire, almost a parody of what they are now. And I just loved watching the evolution of them going from this sort of like, we hire an actor to do a stunt, to being this very serious, charitable, legal organization that they are now. And, so in the beginning, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I really like this. And then they got more and more into, what they are now is basically, it's kind of holding a mirror up to the theocratical overreach that the Judeo-Christian religions have on our society and our politics and things like that. And it makes them sort of see what the hypocrites, that they kind of are, because Lucian tends to turn it around and say, well, if you want to ask this of us, why don't you ask the Catholic Church or the Christian Church the same question? Do they actually believe the stuff that they are saying? Because they're always I think it was, I can't remember if it was Gretchen Carlson or the other blonde chick on Fox News,
Megyn Kelly.
Her, who said,
her.
do you actually believe the things that you're saying, or is this just for, kind of political theater or whatever? And Lucian was like, well, does any religion actually believe what they're saying? Because they kind of have a tendency to cherry pick the things that they want to believe out of their own scripture. So, so that was my summer. That was my good, is that I just loved this evolution that that kind of started out as this like rinky-dink setup of, we're gonna go buy Halloween costumes.
Yes.
And call every media organization that will pick up the phone, to actually being a serious player in, our politics.
I have chills. I just love this movie so much.
I want to go back to college to be a lobbyist, and I can be the lobbyist for the TST.
Okay, so my bad was the schism between TST and Jex. Is it Jex Blackmore?
That was also my bad.
So I had such mixed feelings about it, because I agree. Yeah. I mean, there was definitely some stuff that she said that I really agreed with. Yes. There was one thing that I wrote down.
Oh, it's probably exactly what I wrote down.
They have given us just enough to have something to lose.
Oh, I did like that, but that's not what I wrote down.
Yeah.
So Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, this is my ugly.
Oh, okay.
This
Well,
is my road construction.
then hold it. Or
Okay.
you can talk about it now.
Well, the thing that I wrote about one of the things that I said with Jez was
Jax.
she said Jex, and I keep right. I wrote Jez, so I have to X that out. You can't dismantle a corrupt system of power while functioning within it.
Which is completely the opposite of what
The
Lucian
TSC
believes.
is, yes.
Which is you have to work within the structures that are set up to show them that they're wrong.
Right, right.
Yeah. So, the other thing so it kind of tore me up to see the schism and to see her to be asked to leave the group, because she definitely said some things that I very much supported. Mm-hmm. But I also think that she was like going way off track.
Yeah.
And I really agree with what they said. While we certainly have similar beliefs about the orange megalomaniac who is in the White House right now, you can't call for the death of the sitting president of the United States. You just can't.
Absolutely not.
And you can't
completely agree with them on that.
You totally can't be part of a group that is trying to do advocacy and do activism and do something that's illegal.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. And I mean, the whole scene that they showed where she was like ramming pigs' heads onto spikes and, all the
blinking fluorescent bulbs.
Oh my God. Her imagery was just over the top. So I really, really struggled with her. But I also saw when they talked to Lucian about asking her to leave the temple, he was really sad. He was really torn up about it.
He was. Yeah. And, I honestly think that I wouldn't be surprised to find out that they remain friends to this day.
I'm sure they are. I would not be surprised by that either.
And Jex probably is still doing her thing, but there's no national affiliation with her
the temple.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I loved that they said that it went against everything that they're about, because they're a non-violent organization.
Yes.
They specifically pointed out that, they're against violence. And that it was a national council decision. This wasn't, Lucian being like, nope, she can't say that, she's out. This was, they got together and thoughtfully talked it over and said this went against what, we're about. And, basically that, she's out. And I also liked that Jex said that she was kind of proud.
Right. That it's kind of a mark of honor to be fired by the Satanists.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I also thought it was very interesting that she said that they were afraid to do something so extreme that it would discredit the organization.
Right.
And, on the one hand, I get what she's saying, that, now of all times would be the time to take extreme actions and extreme measures. Calling for the death of the president or anything like that is way over the line.
I was going to say, let's just be really clear right here that is not what we're doing. We don't support that. That is not the policy for the Real Housewives of Alaska.
No. 0 stars, very bad. Do not recommend.
Right.
But that is actually kind of what the TST and Lucian has been doing all along, is been doing things that are extreme so that they get the attention that holds that mirror of hypocrisy up, and I kind of feel that some of the things that other political organizations and other religious affiliations do are just as extreme. We'll go into it, but we saw a lot of extremism on the other side. Mm-hmm. that was not called out. Will probably never be called out. It is usually not called out, if depending on which media you consume. So yeah, I agree with your winter. That was my road construction.
Very good. Well, so what was your winter?
Well, what I just said absolutely segues into my winter, and I thought it was very, very sad that Lucian had to wear a bulletproof vest.
So you are exactly, that was my saddest moment in the whole film.
Yep.
That just watching him put on that bulletproof vest broke my heart, because that is where we are.
You know, and they even said, "Do you really think you'll need it?" And he's like, "No, I don't. But I kind of thought if I were laying there bleeding out from a gunshot wound, that it would be pretty stupid to think that, you know, I have a bulletproof vest at home. You know, they only work if you wear them." But so there was another thing that was really early on in the show, and it was I actually do not think it might not have been Fox News. It didn't have the chyron down at the bottom that said Fox News, but I think it did have Greg Gutfeld in it, but I'm not sure.
Which, by the way, I just want to say they have occupied so much headspace over at Fox. I am so proud of them.
The TSD, yeah.
Yes.
So there was an interview about there were 4 guys sitting around a table, and they were talking about the Baphomet being erected next to the monument, and very offhandedly, quietly, I actually had to rewind a couple of times to write it down, because it was just said so quickly that, I mean, it was almost subliminal. One of the guys, and I don't even have his name because it didn't have the name on the screen, one of the guys said they should be able to put it up, and then they should be shot right next to it,
yes,
and then they could take it down.
Yes.
And I was just horrified at that. And then later on in very, very later on in the documentary, they're interviewing the protesters.
Are you talking about the people from Arizona?
Yes.
Oh.
So what's funny is I actually watched some coverage about that, and the people that protested against the TST, sort of, what was it? It was sort of, I want to say erecting the Baphomet statue.
Oh,
but
no,
they took it down the same day.
I was actually thinking about the people who testified in front of the city council in Arizona.
Oh, yes.
Those who were people, like uber.
So over the top.
Yeah.
Like practically weeping.
Yes.
In their testimony. Yeah. Anyway. So it was at the rally where they were erecting the Baphomet statue, but of course they were taking it down because it wasn't, you know, they were doing it for a day. It was their rally, but the people that protested them actually did not get to protest them the day that the TST were doing their rally, because they did not file the permits in time.
Oh my gosh.
So they actually had to protest the day before, which I don't get that. Like, you filed your protest stuff late, so you have to do it a day ahead. Like, that just doesn't make sense, but I love it. But the rally that the Satanic Temple had was actually an interfaith rally, and they had Christian speakers that spoke ahead of Lucian, and the speakers that they had were in full agreement that there should be a separation between church and state, and that there should not be religious monuments on state property.
And, you know, I think that's something that I certainly have failed to say thus far into the podcast that I really should say, is that I know some wonderful, incredibly rational Christians. I know some people who truly have beautiful hearts, who, when they say they're praying for me, I really believe that they are praying for my well-being. They're not like, we're praying for that sucker who's going to hell.
And I know some really terrible people who don't believe in any religion. Right. So it goes both ways.
Right.
But there were two guys in specific that were protesting before the rally. And if you look very closely, specifically, there were two older gentlemen that were carrying Confederate flags. And one of them was wearing a T-shirt that says, oh man, I lost it. Genetic diversity is, where did it go?
Oh, I think I saw that one. I mean, it was basically like pretty much like a white supremacy T-shirt.
Yeah, it was. Oh man, I have like 5 pages of notes. I just will say that. Yeah. Oh, I'll have to find it and put it in our bycatch.
Okay. Very good.
But I mean, it was very, very sad that these people that professed that they are this religion of God-fearing, God-loving, peaceful Christian people were the ones that were calling for their death, the TST's death, and to burn down their temples and all this violence and everything. And I couldn't help but think that, the KKK and Nazis were protesting the Satanic Temple. And when the KKK and the Nazis are protesting
you're doing something right.
Yeah. So that was my winter. That was my bad. Is just it really, really made me sad that, yeah.
Well, so my road construction, you've actually mentioned a few times kind of in a roundabout way, and actually with some of the same language that I used. I think this movie is perfect for the climate that we're in right now. Because, and here's your language, and I wrote this down so we were on the same wavelength, we need someone to hold this particular mirror up to us so that we can look at our faces.
Yep.
I mean, I'm just going to name off a few names of people who, okay, if you've made it this far, you congratulations, number one, you obviously share some of our political beliefs, or at least are open-minded enough to hear what we have to say. But I'm telling you, Donald Trump has called for people like me to not be part of the United States. I mean, he has said that I am not a valuable person in so many words. Mike Pence is the biggest religious hypocrite out there. Amy Coney Barrett is going to completely remake our landscape in terms of things like abortion rights and marriage equality. We need the Satanic Temple to hold those people's feet to the fire. And to make us as a nation look in the mirror and say, is this really okay? Is it really okay for one group to impose their beliefs on the rest of us?
I've always kind of had this thing, and it started around 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, probably around the time that Trump was becoming the Republican nominee. And of course, I consume a lot of left-leaning political media.
As do I. Yeah.
I try to watch a lot of the other side also. I try to, I know that my analytics are not balanced. I know that I'm seeing a lot more lefty stuff than I am right, but I try and watch, middle ground, libertarian, right-leaning politics, all of that. I try to do that. And so when people have these stories about what the other side did, this like absolutely horrendous thing that the other side said or did or is going to do, or, I try to flip it around and say, if that were my candidate, if that were my side doing that, saying that, whatever, like, would it be such a big deal? Would I be in such disagreement with, like, things are so hyperbolic that it's, but so the same thing, I try to hold that mirror up to myself and say, am I being a hypocrite about this? And so I absolutely love that the Satanic Temple is doing that.
Yeah, I have to agree with that that fellow from The Observer, that British newspaper. This is one of the 20 documentaries that you need to watch to explain 2020.
Wow. Who'd have thought? Like, if you were a time traveler and you went back to like 10 years ago, to like 2010, and tried to explain 2020, do you ever think you would have uttered the words the Satanic Temple?
Probably not.
Right?
Again, especially considering how, with all of the experimentation that I have done with different religious ideas over the years, and the fact that I was still uncomfortable during parts of this movie, probably not. I mean, the fact that I'm sitting and looking at a statue of Medusa and Ganesh, and I've got witches upstairs on my little shelf doing yoga postures. Yeah, even then I wouldn't think that I would utter Hail Satan as something that would explain 2020.
Well, I mean, about a year ago at this time, we were like, y'all need Kali Ma.
Yes, and in fairness, so we've talked about the yugas before, and so yugas are the ages that the Hindus believe we cycle through, and I believe that there are 4 different yugas total, and what they believe is that at the end of each age there is destruction and then the new yuga arises. And right now we're in the Kali Yuga, which is the most destructive, darkest time that humanity goes through, and I'm like, damn, the Hindus are right.
In order for there to make way for new growth, there usually has to be a forest fire or some other destructive force that comes through. So
okay, but you know what? That's kind of lending credence to the people who are like, burn it all down. Well, you know what? You jackasses burned it all down, and here we are.
I'm not advocating for anyone to start any fires. I'm just saying there's a natural cycle to life, and we just happen to be in the really bad one.
Okay, so I think we are definitely in the bycatch portion of the show.
I'm pretty sure, and I actually did find the quote on the older gentleman's shirt.
Oh, okay.
That I found so abhorrent. Diversity is just a genocidal scam. Diversity is a genocidal scam. Like, just let that process for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't want diversity. That's exactly what I want. Like, I want, like, all of those people who were interviewed who were like, yes, these are absolutely my people. There were black people, there were white people, there were straight people, there were gay people.
There was a trans person?
Men, women, trans, like, gender fluid, like, all of those people. I'm like, those are my people.
I definitely got the feeling that our guy with the gauged ears, gender fluid.
Yeah. And I do have to say my favorite one was the little guy with the bow tie and the southern accent. Oh my
God! Yeah, so I told you today.
Was my people.
I told you today that I got my friend Todd to watch this movie, and he was like, it was fantastic, and of all the people, the dude with the bow tie from Arkansas was my favorite person.
He reminds me, and I have actually never watched The Office, and I think it's The Office. There's a character, I think, that's on The Office that he reminds his look and his southern accent and everything. I can see him on one of those kind of shows.
Okay, so this guy deserves honorable mention as a Housewives hero, and his name is Mason Hargett. Hargett.
He grew up in a
fundamentalist church
household. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so if this guy is full on TST, like, and
he totally doesn't look the stereotype, which I love. I love that he totally breaks the mold.
Yep. He is some guy that like Mormons would go to his door and be like, this guy is our people.
Yes.
And they would be like, would you like to take some of our material? And he'd be like, only if you take some.
Right. Yeah, man, I'm going to have to make sure that I have my Satanic Temple mug handy for any door knockers. I'm sorry, I'm having my morning coffee. Would you like to join me? Okay, I have to ask you, did you catch I know they flashed it across the screen, at least I'm pretty sure they did. And I watched the second time and I never caught it. Did you catch the name of the author of the book? He had kind of a Nordic or Germanic accent. What was his book? What was his name? Because I really want to read that book. I Googled, I couldn't find it. You're like, book?
I don't know.
I'm going to have to watch this a third time just to see if I can figure out who this guy is and what his book is, because I'm pretty sure they flashed it and I missed it.
You know, and what's funny is, like I said, I rented this from Amazon.
So you won't be able to watch it again because your rental's going to expire.
I have 48 hours to watch it as many times as I want, and I actually think I'm going to watch it a third time.
So one of my friends actually posted on the Housewives page as she accepted the invitation to like the page, and she was like, I knew I was going to watch this movie so many times, I just went ahead and bought it. I will tell you, I did find this book on the merch page for the Satanic Temple, and it's a book called Speak of the Devil, and the subtitle is How the Satanic Temple is Changing the Way We Talk About Religion. And it's by a guy named Joseph Laycock, Laycock. So I didn't buy it from the Satanic Temple because they wanted $30 for the hardcover. I paid $15 on Amazon and put it on my Kindle, but I am going to read it.
I'm sure they still get some money for selling it on Amazon.
No. So, I mean, it actually, no.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that just the publisher gets it because.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, I would love if anybody watches this and wants to respond and they catch the name of that author or catch the name of his book, please put it on our Facebook page or tweet it when we finally get a Twitter account.
Oh, man. There's so much to talk about.
So you had a very good suggestion for me, which I am going to take up. So today there was not a big, but a very present and very annoying because I was driving to town to be treated for pain. So I actually ended up going to the urgent care today because I've had some shoulder pain that's been so bad over the last 3 days. And I have done everything. I have put every cream on it you can imagine. I've put lidocaine patches on it. I've used my, I'm blanking on the name. I've used my TENS unit on it. I've used a Theracane to do trigger points. I've done ice. I've done heat. I had one of my coworkers give me a trigger point injection with lidocaine. Worse. Way worse. And so today, I was like, I have to get some care. I have to seek care. So I drive into town, the little 2 miles to the urgent care. Thank God it's so nice to be so much closer to town. And there's all of these people with Donald Trump signs, with their giant trucks, with their giant banners. And I'm like, I'm already in pain. And you're making me look at this. And I'm really not in a very good mood anyway. And it's all I can do not to flip you off. And you were like, you need to do the Hail Satan sign to them. And I was like, oh my God. Remind me what that is, number one. And number two, I'm stealing that idea because that is golden.
So it is the pointer finger and the pinky finger up is the Hail Satan sign. And it kind of maybe, like, without the thumb, looks like I love you in sign language.
Right, so you gotta cross the thumb across the two fingers that are down, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And
just so you know, just in case.
I mean, because it kind of looks like double horns. But, I mean, maybe from afar, it could look like you're holding up two fingers like peace, you know? So I kind of think it would be just a personal FU to somebody, but, like, without them being offended, because they're probably not going to know what it is. So it's just a little something for yourself, you know, without being too offensive to people.
It made me feel a little better.
Hail Satan. So, speaking of big outlandish protests, fetishized babies.
Okay, that was a little weird for me.
We've got to talk about that.
And part of it is because there is this whole sexual fetish with like diapering and like adult babies, and I don't know enough about that to know if they kind of crossed the line into that. In fact, that reminds me, one of the words that keeps coming to my mind about this documentary is the word transgressive. And it's completely transgressive. It totally goes against social norms and goes against expectations.
But the fourth tenet of the Temple of Satan is the freedom of others should be respected,
to be offended,
the freedom to be offended. Yes,
and to offend.
Yes, and
fair enough. Okay, that's fair.
Okay, but don't kink shame. Not my kink, but don't kink shame. Like,
I'm not trying to kink shame. I just think it's kind of weird and it's not my thing. But it's okay.
If diapering is your thing, then that's okay to keep that in your bedroom or dungeon or club or whatever, with consenting adults. But I absolutely loved that they were like, what is like the most offensive thing that we could do for like in the face of an anti-choice protest, and it, again, getting political. I've been seeing a lot of things lately where, because of the Supreme Court nominee interview thingies that are going on, where people are like, so all of these pro-choice people are totally fine to separate children from their parents at the border, and they're completely fine with cutting off benefits, in schools and for, needy families and things like that, and basically starving children and all of these other things. But you are totally against a woman having body autonomy, and you'll fetishize a zygote over, taking care of a needy child that has fled a war-torn country at the border. Like, what is the absolute most offensive thing that you could do in the face of that? And I applaud their effort with the whole fetishized babies.
It was pretty freaky.
Art installation.
Yeah.
Because
and I believe that was Jexa's idea. I believe she was the mastermind behind that.
Right. Okay, so, and have you ever seen those baby masks before?
I have not, and they are creepy.
They're hyper-realistic masks. I think they started out with the baby ones. You can get other ones now that are just hyper-realistic masks, and they are super expensive.
And beyond disturbing.
Yes, they're absolutely disturbing. You can get cheaper versions of them now, like at the Halloween costume store. You can get one for like $50, but they originally started off at like $300 or $400.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I forget why or where I looked them up a few years ago when I first saw one. But yeah, they were. And it was because of the way that they were made. They were just like, they were almost even real skin feel. And I kind of have a feeling that they were made for another purpose, maybe a kink purpose. And that's why they had real skin
that was
feel.
kind of my, So
I think that the ones that you can get now probably aren't as well made, and that's why they're only $50. But you can also get like ones of like old people and things like that. So when I saw those masks, I was like, oh my God. And then like all the fetish wear that they were wearing was just, it was hilarious. Like I get what they were doing. I get the humor, and I love that, a probably what's funny is people have no problem with somebody standing out in front of a Planned Parenthood with one of those horribly bloody, gory, disgusting signs that show just these enormously blown up pictures of what is supposed to be an aborted fetus. Usually they are misrepresented on the time frame of what that fetus looks like. But I'm sure a lot of these people that saw that were completely appalled at somebody wearing, black leather short shorts and a harness and a baby mask. Like that was probably just like, oh my goodness, cover the children's eyes. Yet they're standing there holding a sign with this, just ginormous, gory, disgusting scene on it.
Yeah, no, it was disturbing, but again, appropriate point,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, have you started watching The Good Place?
Oh, I've watched like the first 4 or 5 episodes, but it was several months ago, so I need to go back and start a rewatch.
You really need to watch it.
Really, frankly, like this week has been doing continuing education, finally filing my taxes because the soon-to-be ex said he didn't have any of the tax paperwork, and he in fact did. And then just being in physical pain for the last 3 days.
So like I said, they're on Netflix now. They're 22 minutes long, so they're easily digestible, just watch an episode before bed or whatever. I binged the entire 4 seasons in 2 weeks while watching a bunch of other crap. But I just want to know, is Gandhi in the good place or the bad place?
Well, it kind of depends on whether you believe like we believe or you believe like that guy's high school teacher believed.
I loved him. He was like, that's the moral of the story? I call BS. I could not imagine, being a child again, I couldn't imagine being a kid and, watching this documentary on Gandhi or watching a movie about Gandhi and then having somebody go, yeah, Gandhi's in hell. Even he did all these great things, but he's in hell.
Right, exactly. And the guy was like, he created the idea of nonviolent protest. Are you kidding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a Twitter, and I am tweeting Lucian Greaves and the Satanic Temple and letting them know that we are podcasting Hail Satan for our inaugural episode.
Yes. And I hope that he's not offended by anything that we said, but if he is, Tenet 4.
That's hilarious. Oh my god. All right.
I don't think so.
In case anybody wants to follow us on Twitter, and Twitter made this up, I didn't make it up, so I'm sorry. I apologize for the string of numbers in advance. So it is at TheReal683-90786.
Wait, you couldn't pick your own Twitter handle?
It totally gave me a Twitter handle. I don't know what the heck.
Weird.
I know, totally weird. So there we are.
Interesting.
All right.
I love the...
Oh, talk about the church. So tell me what you loved, and then talk about the Church of Satan and Anton LaVey.
Okay, I was just gonna say Anton LaVey. So
he looks so hokey.
I think it was the 1969 movie, or a documentary. It was the footage that they had with him doing a satanic invocation. But there was this little old lady who was like, I just feel so uplifted when I come here.
That was so awesome.
She was like the anti-church lady. I love her.
Yes.
So Dana Carvey used to do a Saturday Night Live character called the Church Lady. And this little old lady was like the anti-church lady. And I loved her.
That is hilarious.
So yeah, I didn't read too much up on Anton LaVey, but that is the Church of Satan. which the Satanic Temple is not at all affiliated with the Church of Satan. In fact, the Church of Satan is, and this is kind of Lucian's response. I'll have to see if I can find it, because the Church of Satan kind of threw some shade at Lucian, I want to say. And so he basically answered back and was, kind of like, well, they're kind of a defunct they're basically a web page at this point that you can buy a $200 membership card from. And that he also believes that the Church of Satan doesn't actually believe in a literal Satan, God, demon, cloven hoof, anything. And they never did. It was that theirs was more of a kind of anti-Christian establishment, whereas the Satanic Temple is not an anti-Christian church, anti-Christian temple. They're basically just they developed a religion for free thinkers that's not anti anything. It just wants everyone to be more inclusive and more, intellectually and scientifically driven than, our Judeo-Christian and, upbringing tells us to be. So I keep wanting to say the Church of Satan because it's almost like it's a shorthand for the Satanic Temple.
Right.
But it's not. They are two different things.
I just love this movie.
So there was one piece of news footage, and I'm pretty sure it was on Fox News. They had someone from the Atheist Society talking about
where he was
he's like, our religions are the same to me, he's like basically, no, they're like, but you care that they're invoking Satan, and he's like, no, I don't. You believe in God, so you also believe in Satan. I don't believe that. All religions are the same to me. I was like, oh, I love it. And so there's, I can't remember if it's in the documentary or if it's in something that I watched on YouTube with Lucian in it. But he basically goes into the difference between being an atheist or a secular humanist and being a member of the Satanic Temple. Because being an atheist tells people what you don't believe in, but it doesn't tell people what you believe in. And the Satanic Temple has a specific, basically theology that they believe in. It's not centered around worshiping a deity. It's a bunch of ideas and, tenets. So I thought that was super interesting because I've always fashioned myself as kind of an atheist, at the very, very most an agnostic. But yeah, I think I may be.
You may be a member of TST and not realize it.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to say a Satanist because they also go into the that we don't actually believe in Satanism because we're not worshiping Satan.
I love the black woman who was like, yeah, people are often disappointed when they realize that I really don't believe in Satan.
Right? Right? I loved that.
I liked what Lucian said about, we're really at this point giving Oklahoma a civics lesson. When they were talking about putting up a statue of Baphomet, and they and they got Oklahoma to actually take down their Ten Commandments monument.
Yes.
Because I really feel like that is what the role of this organization is. This is a civics lesson.
It definitely is.
I know I shouldn't write them off as that being their only role, but they're a civics lesson.
Yeah, and I think that he didn't know how much he was biting off when he started all of this.
No, he had no idea. He's like, I think he said in something that I saw recently that they think they now have like 100,000 members.
Yeah, he said he couldn't believe, and he said with the election of Donald Trump that their number, he's like, even the analytics on our Google searches and everything just totally spiked in 2016.
Which, did you notice the sticker on his phone?
I didn't.
It was a big F Donald Trump sticker.
Oh my God. Oh, I have to say that one of the TikTokers that I follow, because I'm crazy now when I watch TikTok videos, like instead of sleeping, she basically has a PA system on her car, and she goes around to Trump rallies and she blares the song F Donald Trump and totally trolls. I mean, it's such a guilty pleasure that, like,
dude, I'm seriously just gonna drive past and give the Hail Satan sign now. That's all I'm gonna do.
That's so funny. So I cannot remember his name, but he was the was it the governor of Arizona? That was getting the 10 Commandments.
Oh no, so it was actually not Arizona, it was Arkansas, and his name was, I don't remember his first name, but his last name appropriately was Rapert. Rapert.
Was that him? Anyway, it was the guy who said the 10 Commandments monument isn't meant to be a religious statement, but rather a testament.
Oh yeah, that's him.
To the historical, moral foundation of the law.
This is also the dude who made the BS call for civility when, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing a lot of civility coming from that side of the argument.
No. But I'm like, the historical, moral foundation of the law. Okay, you do realize the Constitution specifically has separation of church and state. There was no one religion that they based our morality or our law on. Like, you realize that, right? Oh, see, Smalls agrees.
I was just going to say, Smalls agrees. Dogs and cats living in sin, it's chaos!
Oh, and you know, I always, people who are like, well, it's one nation under God, and in God we trust on our money. Yeah, that came around in the 50s. Like, okay. The founding fathers did not do that.
It's totally perfect that you said that, because I just came across my note that I wrote. The people who testified at the Phoenix City Council were terrifying, far scarier than anyone from TST.
Yeah.
And you're right. And I was shocked to learn that a lot of the monuments and a lot of the under God stuff and all of that came about because of our fear of communism in the 50s and because of that stupid Charlton Heston movie. And I wanted to throat punch him when they showed him unveiling that 10 Commandments monument.
I did not realize that.
I didn't realize it either. I did not realize that is where a lot of this comes from.
Me either. And, you know, I honestly wonder if Cecil B. DeVille would have, rethought his promotion of the movie.
Had he known what he was going to engender?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm pretty sure Charlton Heston would have been on board, but... Yeah, and you know what's funny is Billy Graham was actually, if you look at the IMDb credits, at least in my phone, he was actually credited as himself before Lucian was.
Oh my gosh, that's really funny.
Yeah, and I when I was looking at it, I was like, where's Billy Graham in the movie? And I was like, oh, yeah, they had file footage of him.
Yes.
Yeah. I just, it drives me nuts when anybody, the whole Pledge of Allegiance, it's like, you know, that line about being under God was not always there. Just saying.
So I'm going to confess something that if anyone who's not lefty like us is still with us is probably going to really piss somebody off, but I will stand respectfully. I do not put my hand over my heart. I don't say it. I don't sing the national anthem. Again, I stand respectfully. I'll even bow my head, but it's not my belief system. I don't worship a flag.
Yeah.
I don't worship a song.
That's nationalism.
Yeah, it's not my thing. 0 stars, very bad. Do not recommend.
I'm the same way with prayer. If I am someplace,
I am too. I am respectful. Yeah,
I'm respectful. I will bow my head, stand and bow my head. But there's no reciting anything for me. I absolutely, respect your right to believe in whatever you choose to believe in, but it's not my belief.
Yep.
There were so many small lines in this movie that I absolutely loved or hated. That's why we had to kind of push our podcasting time, is because I kept having to rewind on my rewatch so I could write stuff down.
I was doing a little bit of that myself.
And when they were doing the after school Satan Club, there was that woman who was in there and completely ranting at them about what horrible people they were, and they need to not push their values on other kids, and what about your kids, and you're just terrible. When she was they were finally like, okay, ma'am, you're done. You need to go. Blah blah blah. I don't know what she said. I didn't quite hear it.
Oh yeah.
One guy was like, watch your language around the kids.
Yeah.
There's a Temple of Satan guy going, lady, watch your language around kids.
Right. Okay, so the other thing, and it was right after that moment, so Lucian again was talking, and he's like, people are like, what kind of person would let their kid, or what kind of kid would want to join this kind of club? And he was like, I was that kid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? I was kind of that kid too. Especially the farther I got into high school.
I was going to say, so the guy who was talking about how he was like, the church was like talking about how bad D&D was and heavy metal. And he's like, these were all the things that I liked. And they're, talking about that, these are the bad things. And so he's kind of like, I looked for the exact opposite of what the church was saying. And that's kind of how he fell into the Satanic Temple. And so it kind of made me think of you earlier when you were like, they wouldn't let me have my Def Leppard and
I can
whatever.
Honestly remember going to a service at the Assembly of God Church in Juneau where I was, quote, saved because our uncle was there as a guest, and going home and being like, I don't want to throw my records away. I'll just put them under the bed.
That's so funny.
And that lasted for a very brief period of time. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. Although I don't think I used that language exactly.
Like the other guy said, that's the moral of a story? I call BS.
Right? I'm like, no, this is stupid. I'm going to pull my records back out, play them, and go to hell.
Well, I mean, if it's like some religions, all you have to do is repent right at the end and you're forgiven.
Ugh.
You can do anything. Anything. You can murder, you can rape, you can commit genocide, as long as you repent right at the end and ask forgiveness.
Yeah. God hangs out in prisons a lot, let me tell you.
Loophole. Well, I mean, I found my own religious loophole.
Yeah?
I am 40 years old and I have never been married. And the thing that I absolutely love to tell my relatives is it's not premarital sex if you never intend to get married. Loophole.
So, talking about the Satanic Panic, I did want to mention, and I'm going to go back and finish this podcast because I started it. I talked about it once on Biters. So there is a podcast called Undercover.
That's right.
And season 6 is all about the Satanic Panic in a little town in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to like probably the first 4 episodes and then kind of fell off. I'm going to go back and finish it in all my spare time.
Hey, you have you have a better commute. Not a pretty long one. Longer than mine.
The problem is that it's not a long enough commute to really listen to anything.
Is that why you call me a lot of times?
It's not a long enough time to listen to anything, including you, which is why I call you.
And then you're like, I have to hang up. I'm in my driveway, and so the phone's going to cut off when I walk into my house. So the same governor that we talked about earlier, I just have to say that he was very, very critical of Lucian for using pseudonyms.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kept talking about fake names and fake beliefs and everything. And all I could think was that there is a prosperity preacher whose name is Creflo Dollar. Creflo Dollar, his real name is Michael Smith.
No way, really? I didn't know that.
Yes. I was like, okay, wait a second. Like, using fake names, like Creflo Dollar is not that guy's real name. And I looked him up, and his real name is Michael Smith.
Why would you change your name to Creflo Dollar?
Because you're a flashy prosperity preacher.
And what the heck does Creflo mean?
I have no idea. But, like, I was just like, oh, really? Fake name this.
You are so funny.
Well, I do have to say that I had poured myself a very generous helping of mulled apple cider with spiced rum. And we are now 2 hours in.
I know. I poured myself a very sparing serving of Kinky Pink because I joined Noom and I'm trying to get some of this weight off so I don't hurt so much.
Yeah, and because you got some painkillers and NSAIDs on board, so...
Oh no, because my goal is to become the whore of Babylon once I am fully divorced. That's the truth.
I love that that's where you went on this podcast.
Hey, it's the inaugural podcast. What can I say? What else?
Yeah.
You know, there was so I said I liked how they spent so much time in Fox's head. Mm-hmm. There was a moment where Tucker Carlson actually says something to the tune of, I know a fake news story when I see one. And I'm like, yeah, you do, Tucker. You sure do.
Yeah. We could go down that rabbit hole. In fact, there are a couple of documentaries on Fox News.
Oh, well, we may have to go down that rabbit hole. Or we may have to watch the movie that was made about the women who were sexually harassed.
Oh, that was such a good movie.
I haven't seen it, so that might be a movie that we put...
Bombshell. I think it was called Bombshell.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It was actually a very good movie.
I think the only other thing that I really wanted to say was at the end... Lucian actually is giving his speech in his bulletproof vest, and he says, basically, if Christianity abandons democracy, it will have forfeited the future to Satan, to which I say, Hail Satan! And you know, the thing that I kind of came away with is so many of the fundamentalists, and again, I'm not painting all Christians with the same brush, but so many of the fundamentalists that they interacted with, they were so filled with fear, and they had no sense of humor and no sense of irony.
Mm-hmm. Well, fundamentalism in any form is not healthy. I mean, no matter what you're talking about, fundamentalism, bad. 0 stars. Very bad.
Do not recommend.
One of the things that I liked that Lucian said towards the end when they were talking about the Salem witch trials was the evil was in the witch hunt itself.
Oh, interesting. Was that when they were showing the reenactments in Salem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's completely true, you know. He and this is complete conjecture on my part. He seems to have been very, very influenced by the Satanic Panic movement.
Yes.
So much so that I kind of wonder, again, complete conjecture, that if it affected his life in some way.
In some personal way.
Either somebody he knows and loves was caught up in the Satanic Panic, or you know, in that, like, they had some sort of legal entanglement, or maybe that he had someone that had an implanted memory, you know. So whether it was himself or a family member or a friend, but that seems to really be the root of all of this. And it's kind of fitting that he made the Satanic Temple's headquarters Salem, because of the witch trials. And, you know, exactly 0 witches were killed during the witch trials. You know, I mean, most of those people were, you know, I would say all of those people were innocent and didn't deserve what, you know, they got. And their method of rooting out witches was really flawed, you know, on the church and the judicial system's part. So I kind of think that the whole comparison to the Salem witch trials was sort of a perfect place to go with that.
Yeah, it was all about being afraid of women's power and stealing property from people. That's what it was all about.
Yep. And which is one of the reasons why, you know, I kind of have some feelings about Jex. Is she,
right?
You know,
some positive feelings about Jex. Yeah.
When she was doing the whole pigs' heads on spike thing, you know, she was talking about the oppressive nature of the patriarchy. And
right.
Yeah. So 5 stars.
All right. Anything else?
I don't think so. I
mean, there's so much more.
There is. We managed to talk 2 hours about a documentary that was an hour and a half. So I think we've done pretty good.
And that we're both in love with, and we're both going to go watch again.
Yeah.
And seriously, if anybody's made it this far and you caught the name of the book or the author, please let me know. I'm dying.
I will definitely keep an eye out for it.
And I did update our Real Housewives page to have our Twitter handle on there. Our ridiculous Twitter handle with numbers, a string of numbers. I don't know what that's all about.
I'm going to have to see if I can go fix that.
Yeah, if you can fix it, let me know. Oh, it'll be obvious what the password is, but I'll tell you when we're done.
Kind of like you told us your Roomba password. Which, by the way...
Is it there? Did you get it?
No, it is shipped. Oh. I have bought the Uber S series Roomba.
She crossed over to the dark side.
Yeah. So what did you name your Roomba again?
You better.
Yeah, you better.
And then the password is work, bitch.
Yep. So I don't know what the password for mine is going to be yet, but her name is going to be Rosie after the Jetsons.
Sure.
Because I now have a robot that's vacuuming my house.
Yeah.
Well, not yet. Amazon shipped it. Because Amazon would not ship the Prime deal for Roomba to Alaska. Thanks, Amazon. I watched some YouTube videos and decided, since I'm spending close to $1,000 on a vacuum, I might as well spend over $1,000 on a vacuum.
Did you order extra bags?
I didn't. I forgot. I'm going to have to do that now.
After you order your TST merch.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I have ordered my TST merch. So
I was gonna say, I'm gonna have a hard time. Like, there's actually 2 cups that I want. I want the rounder one, but I also want an orange one.
Well, so I bought a cup, and they had a candle snuffer and a candle trimmer, which I don't have, and I have lots of candles, so there you go.
Thank you for having practical knowledge.
Lucian, if you're listening, thank you for having practical merch.
Oh, that is all I have. Like I said, we've managed to talk more than 2 hours about a documentary that was an hour and a half.
This was great fun, and I look forward to picking out our next one, and I look forward to having Lilith on to discuss The Hate You Give.
Yes.
Which I have never seen, so...
Me either, but it's definitely been on the list.
And Steve, whatever you want to talk about, hit us up, baby.
Yep. You know where to find us.
Right.
At something Real Housewives of Alaska.
With a big string of numbers at the end, which we're not really sure, but 3 of them are 907 because that's Alaska. I didn't make that up. I swear to God.
So, I don't know if you have seen, but they are remaking the movie The Craft. It actually looks pretty good. My only gripe with it would be that I would love to have the original cast members be like the moms of the girls or something. Just because I loved the original movie so much. And I know that you at one time had an issue with the original movie because of its...
All right, I'm going to be straight up and say I've never watched it. I need to watch it. I was really offended by it because I, at the time that it came out, was a practicing Wiccan. And I'm like, this is really not the image that we need in the public.
Yeah. Yep.
So, nonetheless, though, I agree with what you think we should close our podcast with.
Right. So, I'll have to send you the trailer to the new movie, even though you haven't seen the old movie, but they do keep one of my favorite lines from the movie, and we've decided to close our podcast with this line. So the city bus dropping the girls off at some location, when they disembark the bus driver says, "You girls watch out for weirdos now." Which the girls reply, "Mister, we are the weirdos." So, everyone, for the week, until we meet next time, watch out for the weirdos. But just remember,
Mister,
we are the
weirdos.
We'll practice that. We'll get about as good as we are at one day at a time.
We're pretty good on biters. We'll get there.
We'll get there. All right, everybody. Have a good week.
Thank you for so listening. Much. And, certainly hit us up on social media and let us know what socially or politically or culturally relevant, and she's had more to drink than I have.
I have, but I have
movie, podcast, or TV series you'd like us to take a look at and talk about.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.